Good morning and welcome to today's maths lesson. Today we're going to look at the opposite of yesterday, where we are today looking at how we represent fractions as decimals. So please first could you pause the video now and write down the short date and the learning objective for today's lesson in your maths book, please. So pause the video now to do that. So you should have given yourself enough time to write down both the date and LO for this lesson. And the first thing we're going to do, as we do every day, is we are going to look at how we represent, or as we're going to review yesterday's session. Okay, so you can see a table on the screen right now, and it's a similar table to the one we saw yesterday. And what I want you to do is I want you to write down what each decimal is as a fraction. And these are the ones that we need to know off by heart. They were learned by heart in year 5, they were learned by heart again in year 6, and they are really, really important to know. So for example, 0.125, we should all know straight away is 1/8. So please can you pause the video now and complete the rest of that table, please, in your maths books. So pause the video now. Okay, so you should have given yourself enough time to complete that table. So let's have a look what we should have got. We should have known that 0.125, as we said before, is equal to 1/8. We should have known 0.33 is equal to or is equivalent to 1/3. We should have known 0.5 is the equivalent to 1/2. 0.1 is equal to 1/10. And 0.2 is equal to 1/5. And finally, 0.25 is equal to 1/4. As I said yesterday, if you did not know these, copy this table down now and learn it. If you can do this a little bit every single day, it will really help you remember these decimal and fraction equivalencies. And remember, you need to know these ones in this table off by heart. Okay? So let's start with looking at today's lesson, okay? Now, we want to see, again, I've got our table here, where we are showing the learn by heart fraction and decimal equivalencies that we should all know, and as we just went through in our last slide just then. But we are going to look at how we can use this table to help us with a question like this. What is the equivalent to 3/4? Now to do this, I'm going to think about, are there any fractions that I can see in that column on my table that I can link to 1/4? Now if I look closely, I can see that 1/4 can definitely be linked to 3/4 because the denominator is the same. So I know that 1/4 multiplied by 3 gives me 3/4. So there is a link there between the 1/4 and the 3/4. The table and my learn by hearts also tell me that 1/4 is the same as 0.25. So instead of writing my 1/4 here, I can substitute in 0.25. And if I do that, I can get 0.25 times 3, which would give me 0.75. So now I know that 3/4 is not only equal to 1/4 times 3, but it is also equal to 0.75. Let's have a look at our next fraction, 2/5. Again, I look down my column and I check, is there a fraction in this column that I know off by heart the equivalence of that I can use to get to 2/5? So I can see here that now I have 1/5. 1/5 has a link to 2/5 because the denominator is the same. I know that 1/5 multiplied by 2 gives me 2/5. I also know that 0.2 is equal to 1/5. So now I can replace my 1/5 with 0.2. I am still going to multiply by 2 because I want 2/5. And 0.2 times by 2 would be 0.4. So now I know that 2/5 is also equivalent to 0.4. And finally, the last fraction, 7/10. Can I see a fraction in my column here that can help me with this? A fraction that has the same denominator? Yes, I can. I can see 1/10 down at the bottom here. So I know that 1/10 times by what would give me 7/10? Well, I know that 1/10 times by 7 would give me 7/10. The table also tells me that 1/10 is the equivalent to 0.1. So now instead of writing the 1/10 as a fraction, I could write 1/10 as a decimal, multiply it by 7, and I can get to 0.7. So I now know that 7/10 is also equal to 0.7. Now I want you to have a go at this, okay? So remember what I did first. Can you find a fraction in this first column that we can link to 4/5? So is there a fraction here that has the same denominator? I'll get you started on this one. I can see that 1/5 has the same. So what am I going to multiply 1/5 by to get to 4/5? And then think about what is 1/5 equal to as a decimal, and can you then work out what 4/5 would be as a decimal? So pause the video now and have a go at that, please. Right, you should have given yourself enough time to do that, those 4 questions. Let's go through them together. Now, what fact do I know that can help me with 4/5? And I know now it is equal to 0.8. I know that 1/5 is equal to 0.2. So to get from 1/5 to 4/5, I times by 4. And to get from 0.2 to 0.8, I multiply by 4. And that links back to what we did before. We find the facts that we know off by heart which can help us. Let's look at 2/3. Is there a fraction in the column that has the same denominator? Yes, there is. 1/3. I know 1/3 is equal to 0.33. To get from 1/3 to 2/3, I multiply by 2. So to get from 0.33, I have to also multiply by 2. That works again. We can use the fact here 1/8 is equal to 0.125. And therefore, when we times by 5, we know we get to 0.625. And again, for number 4, we should have recognised that 1/10 is equal to 0.1. And to get from 1/10 to 3/10, we multiply by 3. And therefore, we need to do the same to the other side. So we can see here that by using our learn by heart fact equivalencies, it makes working out other fractions into decimals or converting other fractions to decimals a lot easier for ourselves. But just like yesterday, we can't always see a link between the fraction and our learn by heart facts, okay? So I've put down a couple here, all right? And the key here is, the key to remember here is, sorry about that line, that should not be there. Give me one moment. The key to remember here is, what does the line mean in a fraction? And we've discussed this at school. We have done this a few times, and we should all know that the line in a fraction means divide. And we can now use this to help us. Because now I know that 9 over 100, and the line means divide. So 9 over 100 is the same as doing 9 divided by 100. Now, we looked at dividing by 100 last week. We should not be doing a formal method for that. We should know that if we can't see a decimal point, it goes at the end. We see a divide, so we are going backwards. We see 2 zeros, so we are doing the 2 jumps. And therefore, if I go 1, 2, I have a new decimal point. I cross out my old one, fill in the placeholder, nothing before the decimal point, so I can put a 0 there. And straight away now, I know that 9/100ths as a decimal is 0.09. Now, number 2 here is a little bit trickier than that, but we still use the knowledge that the line in a fraction means divide. So if I write 4/7, and I remember that this line means divide, I just need to know that that means 4 divided by 7. Now, this is where, with this one, it's not as easy as dividing by 100, dividing by 7. It's actually more difficult. So if I'm looking at 4 divided by 7 here, I would use my formal method, the bus stop method, to help me with this. And now I remember inside out to help me remember that saying that I mentioned last week to everyone. So on the inside goes the 4, and on the outside goes the 7. And this is where people would get confused if you don't remember inside out, because usually we put the bigger number inside the bus stop. But that is not always true, as we can see here. The saying inside out is always true. So if you remember that saying, it will really help you with dividing. And just like before, we still use inside out now. 4 is on the inside. We're dividing that by 7. We are thinking, how many times does 7 fit into 4? Well, it doesn't. So we're having a 0 there. Now we've got no others left, have we? So what we would do, and we've done this before in school, put a decimal point and put 3 zeros after that decimal point. And just as we would do before when we've got 0, we still have our remainder of 4 here. So that would be carried to the next 0. Now we've got 40 divided by 7. Now some of you might want to write down your times tables to help you with this. So others wouldn't. Some of you might want to do dots. Others won't. That is completely up to you how you want to do it. If you're doing dots, you would do 40 dots and you would circle them into groups of 7. If you're writing down your times table, you would write down your 7 times table on the side until you got above 40. But most of you should know by now your 7 times table, and you should be able to see that it goes in 5 times, because 7 times 5 is 35, and therefore there is a remainder of 5 as well. We now go inside out again, so now we've got 50 divided by 7. Again, if you want to draw dots, you can. If you want to write down your times tables, you also can. Those of you who know your times table will know that it goes in 7 times, because 7 times 7 is 49, and therefore there is a remainder of 1. Because to get from 49 to 50, which is the number we wanted, we have to go up 1 more. We then go inside out again, so we now have 10 divided by 7. And here again, if you need to draw dots, draw them. If you need to write your times table down, do it. If you know your times tables off by heart, you will know that 7 goes into 10 once, because 1 times 7 is 7. And then there is a remainder this time of 3. Now, here we've finished here, and we've got a remainder of 3 here still. Now, as you get older, you might have to go on and put a few more zeros here, but at our stage, we do not need to do that. All we need to do is put 0.571 ... Because what that tells us is, I have got to the 3rd decimal place, 1st decimal place, 2nd decimal place, 3rd decimal place, and I know that there is still a remainder. So I put ... there. So now it's your turn. Okay, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a start with the first 2, but it's your turn to have a go at this. And remember, the line means what? What does the line in a fraction mean? The line in a fraction means divide. So if we look at this here, I know that 2/9 is the same as doing 2 divided by 9. I know that 1100 is the same as doing 11 divided by 100. Now, in quite a few of these, you might need to use the bus stop method to help you with it. However, you will not need to use the bus stop method for all of them. See if you can see which one you do not need the bus stop method for. Okay? And remember, just as we did on the slide before, if you reach that 3rd decimal place, like we've done here, and you still have a remainder, as you can see in my division, you just put ... to show me that you know that you have not got to the final answer yet. So if you pause the video now and have a go at these 4 questions, and then when you've done them, we will go back and we will mark our work. So you should have given yourself enough time to answer those questions now. So let's have a look at what the answers would have been. So 2/9 is 0.222 ... because it's going to carry on going. And to get there, you should have done 2 divided by 9. To get to 1100 is 0.11. To do that, you should have done 11 divided by 100. 1/6, you should have done 1 divided by 6 to get to 0.166 ... And 5/8, you should have done 5 divided by 8 to get to 0.625. So please mark your work. Now, some of these you do not need to use the bus stop for. We shouldn't have used the bus stop for number 2. Because we should know if we're dividing by 100, we are moving our decimal point, we are doing our jumps. The divide sign tells us to go backwards. There are 2 zeros, so we have to do 2 jumps backwards, and that should have been a very quick answer for you to calculate. The other one you might not have needed the bus stop method for is question number 4. Because some of you might have already known here that 1/8 is equal to 0.125, and you might have used that learn by heart fact to help you work out what 5/8 would have been. But these were the correct answers. Again, if you've got one wrong, have another go, because the chances are you've done something wrong in your divide. Okay, so have another go at those. And lastly, before you go onto a worksheet, what I want you to do is to draw this table in your books. Now, yesterday and earlier on before this lesson, we were converting from decimals to fractions, but this time we are going from fraction to decimal. So I want you to copy this table up into your books, please. And can you complete the table by saying what the equivalent decimal would be to these fractions? For example, I know 1/2 is equal to 0.5. So can you complete the rest of that table, please? Pause the video now and complete that table in your books. So you should have now given yourself enough time to complete that table. Let's have a look at what the answers should have been. So for 1/3, we should have got 0.333, and then ... because it's 0.3 recurring. I would also let you have just 0.333 or 0.33. I will let you have either of those. For 1/4, we should have got 0.25. For 1/5, we should have got 0.2. For 1/8, 0.125, and for 1/10, 0.1. Now, if you don't know these off by heart, please try to learn them off by heart. But if you're struggling, we can use the methods we've just talked about. If we remember the line means divide here, we know that's 1 divided by 10. There is no decimal point in the number 1 that we can see, so it goes at the end. We are dividing, so we're jumping back. There is 1 0, so we're jumping back 1 space. The new decimal point, there's nothing before the decimal point, so now we've got our answer of 0.1. And as you can see, that is the same as if we just know it off by heart. Okay, I'll do another example. If we look at 1/4, I know 1/4 means 1 divided by 4. If I now use my bus stop method, and I remember inside out, so inside, out, I now can see that 1 divided by 4 can't fit inside 1. My decimal point comes next. I do my 3 zeros after the decimal point. I then carry the 1 across. 10 divided by 4 is 2, remainder 2. And then 20 divided by 4 is 5. And I can see that 0.25 is exactly the same as I get if I know my learn by heart fact. So we can use the methods that we've done today to help us if we forget our learn by heart fact equivalencies. So now it's time for you to log on to Class Dojo and complete the maths activity which has been set for today. I also want you to take a picture of the work that you have done in your maths book and send it across to your class teacher, please. Now remember, if you are struggling with any of this that we've done today, because some of this is quite challenging, me and Miss Beck are live on Microsoft Teams from 10:30 until 11 o'clock to give you support with the work. Please log on to Teams at this time if you do need this support. As I say, some of this is quite tricky. As long as you remember the line means divide, then you should be okay. But if you're finding it tough, please log on and we will help you with it. If you have completed the work confidently and you're happy and you've got the work right and you've submitted your Class Dojo worksheet as well, you do not need to log on to the live session. It is there for you for support if you need it. Well done with today's work again, and I will see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.